Hello, heathens! I'm Megan Angus, and this is Spinning the Wheel podcast. In this weekly audio ritual, we explore the 8 seasons of the witch's wheel of the year, and we discover how it is so much more than 8 Sabbats. We weirding witches time travel through holy days, festivals, and celestial events connecting our celebrations and magic to the past, present, and future. Our cackling fills the night as we take our turn gathering the wool, wielding the distaff, and spinning the wheel. Okay, heathens, let's get into it. This is Beltane season, waning moon in Pisces, lunar week 16. Okay, we are still making our way through Beltane season, but we have officially entered the last 4 weeks of Beltane season, and that means that we are also in the last 4 weeks of spring. So we are going to start to really encounter a lot of astrology, lunar phases, and holy days that are really kind of centered around shape shifting, changing shape, changing form, moving from one world to another. We're going to see a lot of weather deity stuff come up in this next month. We're going to see a lot of maritime and mariner symbolism come up because we are in the auspices of Gemini, ruled by the planet Mercury. And both of those entities or archetypal symbol collections really have a lot to do with a lot of that stuff. Commerce, traveling, especially short distances, and that traveling thing is also tied into the ideas of shape-shifting and changing shape and moving from one form to another, being similar to the idea of moving from one place to another. All embedded in our Gemini and Mercury symbolism, which we really get into here in these last 4 weeks of Beltane, the season of holy humbery. That starts out with this very binary symbolism of the goddess and the god knocking sacred boots, but ultimately as we move through Beltane becomes this plurality, this multiplicity, this very diverse, variegated symbol set that we work with, of seeing gods and goddesses change shape and move from one plane to the next and all of that stuff. Also within all of this, we start to see a heightened emphasis on magic and magical practices and magicians, this week included. Okay, so what have we got coming up? We have Tarot Circle this week, May 24th, 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. This is a community building workshop. This month we are workshopping air in the tarot. So air right there dialed in with all of that Mercury and Gemini business. This is a free workshop for everyone who is a Patreon, as a way for me to say thank you to my patrons for supporting me and this work. Sign up starts at $1. That's USD, my friend. If you want to know more about these types of events, you can always go to my website and sign up for my free irregular newsletter. You'll get a discount code when you first sign up. That's good on anything that I happen to be selling at the time, pretty much. If you sign up to my Patreon at the $9 and higher level, you can get access to the books, the workbooks that accompany the Wheel of the Year classes. And that's 15 to 20 pages, calendar, spellcrafting, herbs and crystals and things like that to use, traditions and the astrology, astronomy, meditations and such. Okay. There's links for everything in the description of this particular episode. So, dialing in specifically on our Beltane season witches work, we are looking at fertility, fecundity, and action. So fertility is, to make ripe. Fecundity is another way of kind of saying that, to make ripe, to fill with potential, to recognize the potential in a thing to grow or produce stuff, and action, right? Doing stuff here on the physical plane, whatever it is. And when we look around the planet, as we've mentioned in the past, with our global themes, we're seeing surging power, fertility, and exchanging energy with opposing systems. Lots of symbolism around sex, lots of symbolism around death and the ancestral dead, and lots of symbolism incorporating both of those things. So, with that, let us get into this week. May 22nd is a Sunday, and we have a waning moon in Pisces at 1 degree, 11:43 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, later in the day for everybody else around the planet. Um, okay, so let's start with our lunar phase. We are at the waning half or the waning quarter. It's called both. What does that get us? Well, this is the point in the process where the fruit begins to wither. Okay, we had our to align us in our lunar fruit symbolism. At the new moon, we have the seed. At the waxing crescent, we have a little like sprout that kind of sticks out. At the waxing half, we have a vine that's like, are we going to do this or not? At the gibbous moon, we have a vine that's like, yep, I'm going to do stuff. I'm going to be producing fruit soon. It's going to be pretty cool. At the full moon, we have a fruit that appears. We have some kind of result from our efforts appear. At the disseminating moon, that fruit ripens. And so the disseminating moon kind of, comes like a few days later and is like, okay, what appeared at the full moon is now ready to be reconciled with, or is here to be reconciled with. And so now here we are at the waning half or the waning quarter. And this is where that vine begins to wither and begins to kind of collapse back on itself. And this point in the process really asks us to take a look at what needs to change in our process. And it doesn't always mean that there's been a failure in the process, especially depending on what sign the moon is in when we get to this lunar phase. And, mileage may vary on that, right? But there are certain signs where it's more likely that you're thinking about a success that you've had at the full moon, and something that produced a reward or a good or a wanted result at the disseminating moon. And now you're thinking, this is good, but am I holding on to good and losing out on great? Maybe there's something here that I need to let go of to invite in even more success, right? Sometimes that is the way that we can look at this moon. But in this particular moon, in Pisces, it's a super emo moon. It's like a super feels moon. And it is in a pretty wide conjunction to Saturn in Aquarius. But it is a conjunction. It's wide, but it is a conjunction to Saturn and Aquarius. And it's also square to Mercury retrograde. And so, there's this sense of like, being stopped, feeling the limitations of things, feeling like you cannot get your message across, feeling like you are not being heard, and that's certainly some pretty common stuff. I think that a lot of us can relate to as we are sort of facing the bureaucracy and feeling like we're really getting shut down or stalled out by the bureaucracy, and our message is not being heard. We are not being seen. I think that that's pretty apt, honestly. And so this moon, I think, really kind of actually invites us to kind of come into alignment with our sorrow and with the sorrow of the people around us. And I know that that's super heavy. And I know that some of us are not in a place to do that. So don't, right? Always, and first and foremost, do what's healthy for you, do what's safe for you. But if you are in a place to consider the pain of the world right now, this is a moon that invites you in to do that work. Um, have a good cry. But also, this moon needs us to then move out into the world and do something good for somebody in the world who is hurting. And if you are moved to do something on the national level or the international level, because goddess knows there's plenty of tragedy pretty much everywhere you look these days. It's kind of wholesale. It's Costco has it real cheap right now. Not an ad for Costco, not sponsored. Uh, um, but you know, I also encourage you to check in with people locally. If you want to donate to shooting victims in Buffalo or LA or Houston or let me name off another 15 American cities, right? Because it's pretty much one every day. That is fine and great. There's nothing wrong with that at all. But I bet that there are probably also victims of gun violence or victims of white supremacy in your hometown. In fact, I can kind of guarantee it. And they need your help too. And in fact, there might be something even more magical and special about connecting with the people who are your little neighbors, and witnessing their pain, witnessing their fear, coming into close contact with that. That kind of feels even a little more scary, right? Than connecting with somebody that's across the country or around the world. It's not that those people don't also need our help. And so here also is this. Um, this kind of work can feel extremely futile, right? Because we have our one little tiny drop of good that we're going to go into the ocean of fucking suffering that's out there, right? Like, that's just one microcosmic drop. And you're right. It is. It is. It actually is small. But one, never ever feel guilty about the help that you give. um, it's not your fault that there's this much suffering in the world, right? And it's not your fault that you only have so much good to do, right? Or that you only have so much help to give. That's just the way that like systems are finite. No matter what is happening, you are only going to be able to help so much as an individual. Um, but also, think of it this way. You only had so much help to give out that day, and you gave it out. That's always going to be better than not. So, act on the international and the national level, but I actually encourage you to act on the local level and reach out to people and be affected. Be in pain with your neighbor. It's okay. Um, and do not feel guilty that you cannot alleviate all of their suffering. Um, just do what you can, because that's all we ever can do, honestly. Okay. For our lunar body work, while we are hanging out with this waning moon in Pisces, we are resting, relaxing, nourishing, supporting, or otherwise restoring the legs, especially the ankles and the feet. So, yes, the pedicure is a holy act this weekend. Thank you very much. And as I always say every week, I am not a doctor of the human corpus. I am a doctor of the cosmos. And so, if you are wanting to integrate any of this information into your health care regimen, check in with your trusted health advisor, not just some lady yelling on the internet. All right, for our plant body work with a waning moon in Pisces, we are planting, transplanting, and grafting our flowering bulbs, our biennials, our perennial flowers, and veggies that are going to bear crop below ground, like onions, carrots, potatoes, etc., etc., etc. Okay, on to literally May 23rd, because we have no holy days. Oh, no, I lied. Let's talk about astrology. We're going to talk about astrology. Are you ready? Okay, the astrology for this day isn't too epic. I didn't need to go off on that, but Here it is. We have Mars in Pisces, sextile Pluto in retrograde in Capricorn at 28 degrees. Now, anytime Mars and Pluto hang out, it can be a little spicy. Um, Mars is definitely like in power bottom mode right now because it's about to go into its home sign of Aries later in the week. So it's very like about everything. um, Generally speaking, though, a sextile between Mars and Pluto can feel like if all of my parts are in alignment with each other, we can really get some stuff done on this day. If there's frustration, if there's stuff that makes you feel impatient, if there's things that like kind of trigger your, need to flex your power or whatever, we could definitely go off the rails on this day and, be a little snippier or manipulative or power hungry than we maybe want to come across or actually are. But generally, this can be a really great day for dialing in on your goals and getting straight with stuff. And to me, with all of that stuff going on in Pisces, I feel like this could be a thing of, driven to help, driven to bring justice to, these power sources that create instability and inequity in our communities and things like that. So it could be kind of a like, what I'm doing today is serving soup at the food kitchen, the soup kitchen. But in the back of my mind, I'm thinking about how we need to tear these systems down. Also, though, and we have Mercury in retrograde walking backwards into Taurus on this day. And that could really mellow out a lot of everything that's going on because Mercury in Taurus wants to just like hang out. Is kind of like, I'll just sleep till it's over sort of vibes. And the number one thing that I would say about this is watch your spending. Just read the fine print on stuff, have somebody else look at it. You might literally sleep on it. And like, if you have a thing that you want to buy, put it in your favorites in the morning in a tab somewhere and wait 24 hours and then come back and see if you still are as hyped up about it or, if the fine print is still the same and all of that kind of thing. Okay, that's it. That's it. There's no holy days for this day that I know of anyways. So on to May 23rd. May 23rd is a Monday, and there is nothing I can do about that. I apologize. We have our waning moon still hanging out in Pisces. So tonight I get whatever that meme is, emo stuff. Okay. Let us tuck directly into our holy days for May 23rd because we do have a little astrology, but I don't really care. We have, all right, I'll say it. We have the sun in Gemini, sextile Jupiter in Aries at 2 degrees. This can feel just like a general burst of optimism, being able to see like what is possible in a situation or what is working well. What deserves expansion or investment or whatever. And then Mars in Pisces, sextile Mercury in retrograde in Taurus at 29 degrees. This can definitely feel like a day where you are capable of getting your thoughts across. But of course, Mercury is in retrograde, so it might be thoughts from the underground. Or this might be a day in that's really good for trading and gossip. Or trading in information that's kind of from the underground in one way or another. Okay, our holy days of May 23rd. We've got some interesting ones. So first off, from our Roman friends and ancestors, we have Tubilustrium, number 2. So the first one was in March, and this ceremony was a feast to cleanse and purify trumpets that were used in sacrifices. And there's some conjecture around that. Some sources say that this was a ceremony that featured trumpets, and other people are like, no, this was a ceremony for the trumpets. But these trumpets are connected to some other festivals that are kind of happening now and going on soon. So also on this day from our Roman friends and ancestors, we have the Rosalia. And this is a multi-part festival. Again, these things are all kind of woven together. And they all ultimately sort of fall under the auspices of the Vestalia, which is coming up soon. And this is a big festival dedicated to the goddess Vesta, who we will talk about this week. But what happened during the Rosalia was that roses, which are coming into bloom at this time of year, would have been brought to market. So it was a big deal for merchants to be able to bring roses to market. But also, there was this rose celebration in general, and also a bunch of military festival stuff or celebrations, I should say, military like rituals that were held all in the midst of this stuff. And the military parades were decorated in roses. So it's all kind of woven together here. Also, from our Roman friends and ancestors, we have the rites of Vulcan. Vulcan is the god of fire, including the fire of volcanoes, deserts, metalworking, and the forge in ancient Roman religion and myth. He is often depicted with a blacksmith's hammer. And so, yes, Vulcan is connected to all of our blacksmith deities around the planet. But here's where we can see Vulcan is also connected to the god slash planet Pluto. And remember, Scorpio has shared rulership of Pluto and Mars. This is sort of one of those weird ways of kind of going around, but showing how Pluto and Mars are kind of connected together. Because here, they're doing things that are very similar to each other in this god of Vulcan. Okay. Also on this day, from our Yoruba land friends and ancestors, we have the Feast of Shango. Shango or Chango is an Orisha, a deity in the Yoruba religion. Genealogically speaking, Shango is a royal ancestor of the Yoruba, and he is known for his very powerful axe. Okay, let us head on to May 24th. May 24th is a Tuesday, and our waning moon enters Aries. So, what I want you to focus on for these first couple of days of the moon being in Aries is just your lunar body work and your plant body work. We're going to deal with the psychobabble of the Aries moon in a couple of days when it hits the balsamic degree on the 26th. So for our lunar body work with a waning moon in Aries, we are relaxing, resting, nourishing, supporting, or otherwise restoring the head, the hair, the scalp, the eyes, and the sinuses. So, yes, that deep moisturizing and conditioner treatment is absolutely a holy act for your hair. Yes. Your witch has told you. Yes. And for our plant body work, we are harvesting, we're doing pest control, we are doing disease control, we are plowing, weeding, aerating the soil, and pruning to encourage below ground growth. And, funny thing to think, well, it's the middle of spring harvest, and yet we just talked about the rose harvest in ancient Rome being brought to market. So yes, this is a great time for harvesting flowers, if nothing else. Ethically, of course. Don't get crazy out there. Okay, and for our astrology on this day, we have a couple of things. We have the planet Mars entering Aries. Okay, is this spicy? Yeah, it can be a little spicy. Aries is Mars's home sign, so Mars feels exceptionally comfortable here. Fiery fire is fiery, is what I have in my notes. We might be feeling super impatient, really passionate, really brave, really brash. We might want to start all the things finally. It's lovely. Whatever Mars is in your chart, that part of you or those parts of you may feel a little more comfortable in expressing themselves more authentically. That's how I personally often experience when the planets are traveling through their home signs. I think about, what is it that Mars represents in my chart, in my psychology and in my emotional makeup and my me makeup, right? Those pieces of me that are represented by the planet Mars may want to or feel like they can be more authentically themselves while that planet is traveling through their home sign. So, the parts of me that are a little more impatient, a little more passionate, a little more brave, a little more brash, a little more excited to start all the things might be feeling their more authentic self and expressing themselves more authentically as Mars is traveling through Aries. We love. Also, I'm an Aries rising, so, you knew. Also, on this day, we have Venus in Aries sextiling Saturn in Aquarius at 25 degrees. Um, and a sextile between Venus and Saturn actually brings us into a little bit more harmony with the ideas of stability and longevity and that kind of stuff. So how I see that is that this sextile between Venus and Saturn might take the edge off of Mars entering Venus, or excuse me, Mars entering Aries just a little bit. But note that we have the waning moon entering Aries, we have Mars entering Aries, and we have Venus in Aries making an aspect with another planet. So this is a lot of Aries energy for this day on a Tuesday, which is tier that's connected to Mars. So, okay. um, what I would say here is go for it if it feels right to go for it, whatever it is. Like, if you can have a bonfire involved, do. If you can wear red this day, you probably should. But also, slow down, take a breath, drink some water. Are you in traffic? Slow down. Are you walking up the back of people's legs on the escalator? Slow down. Or go pace around the block a couple of times to get some of the excess energy out of your system or whatever. But just take a minute, make sure that you are in control. You want to be passionate? Wonderful. Brave? Wonderful. Just make sure that you're present with yourself and that you're in control of this very fiery energy. It's just a lot on one day, on a day that's literally dedicated to Mars. I love it. Oh my God. Magic. It's so good. I will be in the streets, probably setting something on fire. Just, you've been warned. Okay. Holy days for May 24th. From our French and Romani friends and ancestors, we have the festival or the feast day of Saint Sara la Kali. Saint Sara, also known as Sara la Kali or Sara the Black or Sara I Kali, is the patron saint of the Romani people. The center of her veneration is Centre Marie de la Mer, a place of pilgrimage for Roma in the Camargue in southern France. Now, she is often connected with the Three Marys. She is often connected. There's another story that says that she was a goddess that helped receive the Three Marys into France when they were running for safety, et cetera, et cetera. So there is a lot of Catholic imagery that has been woven into the stories around this figure, but also very clearly she carries the name Kali. She is depicted as a Black Madonna or a Black Mary. And so, it brings up all of the amazing questions that come up around the Romani people and where their beliefs came from and all of that incredible stuff. So, this is a day that is dedicated to this character and to the Romani people. Also, on this day, from our French friends and ancestors, we have the Day of the Three Marys. From our Celtic friends and ancestors, we have the Feast of the Three Mothers. And from our Catholic friends and ancestors, we have the Feast of the Holy Trinity. So, there's kind of a little bit of a thing going on there. um, and that Trinity thing, that thrice great thing, three-part goodness thing, is going to also come up on this day because from our Greco-Egyptian friends and ancestors, we have the first feast of Hermes Trismegistus. Hermes Trismegistus, aka Hermes the Thrice Great, or Mercurius Ter Maximus, is a legendary Hellenistic figure that originated as a syncretic combination of the Greek god Hermes, and the Egyptian god Thoth. He is the purported author of the Hermetica, a widely diverse series of ancient and medieval pseudepigraphical texts that lay the basis of various philosophical systems known as Hermeticism. And if you are a witch or a pagan in the modern era, you probably practice some amount of Hermeticism in your magical practices, whether you know it or not. That's how deeply embedded these magical systems are in the magical paradigms of the present as well as the past. Um, the influence of the Hermetica is far and wide. It is nearly ubiquitous in some realms of magic. Um, if you haven't read the Hermetica, if you haven't read the Emerald Tablet, and you are interested in magical practices beyond pagan religious worship or pagan spiritual worship, but you are interested also in the magical practices that pagans and magicians and heathens get up to, read these templates, like read these old texts, the Hermetica, the Emerald Tablet. Important stuff, because they are literally the foundational texts of your magical practices, or pieces of your practices anyways. So this is the feast day of Hermes Trismegistus. Kind of cool. Also, on this day, from our global friends and ancestors, we have Pansexuality and Pan-Romantic Awareness Day. Pansexuality Visibility Day, also known as Pansexual and Pan-Romantic Awareness and Visibility Day, is celebrated on this day. It was created to increase the visibility of people who can experience sexual, romantic, or emotional attraction towards people regardless of their biological sex or gender identity. The term pansexuality includes the ancient prefix pan, as in the god Pan, which means every and all. An alternate term is omnisexuality, derived from the Latin word omnis, which also means all. People who identify as pansexual can feel attraction to people of any sex or gender: cisgender and transgender men and women, intersex people, people with non binary gender identities as well. In other words, for them, sex and gender don't play any role when choosing a partner. Of course, this doesn't mean that pansexuals are attracted to everyone, just as heterosexual people are not attracted to every single person of the opposite sex. And also on this day, we really packed them in here on May 24th. From our Roman friends and ancestors, we have the supplication to Vesta. Now, Vesta is the virgin goddess of the hearth, home, and family in Roman religion. She was rarely depicted in human form, and she was often represented by the fire of her temple in the Forum Romanum. Entry to her temple was permitted only to her priestesses, the Vestal virgins, who guarded particular sacred objects within, prepared flour and sacred salt for official sacrifices, and tended Vesta's sacred fire at the temple hearth. Now, this is in preparation for the upcoming Vestalia, which is coming up pretty soon. I believe it's going to be in the beginning of June. Now, Vesta in astrology is an asteroid that some people like to work with. Other people are like, I don't need it in the chart. But it is a representation of the energies that we think of in Virgo and in Scorpio. So a combination of really intense energies, honestly. And what it culminates in is, the asteroid represents in our chart the things in us that are like personal integration through discipline, sexual liberation, spiritual devotion, and Kundalini energy. So heavy duty stuff there. So you might look up where Vesta is in your chart natally and think about that, because this is a day for honoring that. Or you might look up where Vesta is transiting through your chart and kind of think about, this energy sort of being lit up in that part of your life. All right, let's move on to May 25th. All right, May 25th is a Wednesday, and our waning moon is still hanging out in Aries. The astrology on this day, we just have Mercury retrograde in Taurus, trining Pluto retrograde in Capricorn at 28 degrees. This could result in some kind of intense communications between you and other folks. I could definitely see this as manifesting as really intense gossip coming up from the underground or the underworld, or like a reconnecting with some underworld information networks. But also, this could be a day of just like really intense personal introspection and kind of really intense, like personal investigation. Okay, let us move directly on to the holy days of May 25th because we have a few. Um, from our Yoruba friends and ancestors running from May 25th to May 31st, approximately, we have Igungun. This is a masquerade for ancestor reverence, or the ancestors themselves being depicted as a collective force. Igungun is a visible manifestation of the spirits of departed ancestors who periodically revisit the human community for remembrance, celebration, and blessings. Also from our Yoruba land friends and ancestors, as well as our Santeria friends and ancestors, or Santera friends and ancestors, the dance of Okosi. Okosi is the spirit associated with the hunt, forests, animals, and wealth. He is spirit of meals because it is he who provides food. He is associated with lightness, astuteness, wisdom, and craftiness in the hunt. He is the Orisha of contemplation, loving the arts and beautiful things. He hunts with a bow and arrow called Ofa, hunting for good influences and positive energies. From our Asian friends and ancestors, today is the celebration of Tao as the mother of the world. And this is celebrating the concept of the Tao as a female universal principle and the Taoist attitude of being like an infant or even as an embryo. And very interestingly, because we have from our Roman friends and ancestors the Dies Natalis of the Temple of Fortuna Primigenia, which is dedicated to the goddess Fortuna Primigenia, or the fortune of the firstborn. So, um, just a very interesting connection there with babies and firstborn, and thinking of yourself as an infant, in the universal womb and all of that stuff. um, but timely symbolism because Cancer coming up here in a month is definitely mother energy and is the mother that gives birth to the human spirit and all of this other good stuff. We'll talk about that more when we get into Litha season. Also on this day from our Greek friends and ancestors, we have Kalentyria. This is the sweeping out, and it is on this day that women swept out the temple of Athena in Athens, and probably her eternal flame was refilled and relit by the priestesses. And last but not least, somewhere here at the end of May, we have the Haudenosaunee planting festival from our Haudenosaunee indigenous friends and ancestors here on Turtle Island. And this is a planting ceremony that sits with a lot of the other planting ceremonies that are happening at this time of year: corn, beans, squash, the Three Sisters, and whatever else is going to be planted at this time of year. All right, let us move on to May 26th. But before that, how about an ad? Okay. If you love this podcast, you can support this work through Patreon. Thank you a bajillion billion times. See, the sirens are going off even as I say it. Thank you so much to my patrons. You guys don't even know. You don't even know. Thank you so much. You can sub for as little as $1 if you just think this podcast is dope and you want to support it. I don't run ads on the podcast partly because I don't want to, and partly because I won't get paid even if I do. So screw them, man. You can sub, as I said, for as little as $1 or $5, even if you want to just support the podcast. And this is plenty of information. But if you want even more information, extra podcasts, extra videos, extra information about the Wheel of the Year, magical practices, tarot, etc., subbing at the higher levels, you get all kinds of cool free stuff. And at the even higher levels, you get free readings every month with me to be able to integrate all of this information into your personal life based on what's going on in your natal chart and all of that other good stuff. Join and change your life forever. Or, whatever. Thanks so much for the support. If you can't support financially, I completely understand, because life sucks on Earth right now. It's too expensive for everything. Tell a friend, share it on social media, give it a thumbs up. If you're feeling especially hedonistic, you can leave a rating or a review. All right, that's the end of the ad. Let's get back to the podcast. Okay, May 26th is a Thursday, and if you have not gotten enough Aries energy in this week, too bad, because here's some more. We have on this day our balsamic moon in Aries at 20 degrees at 4:35 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, later in the day for everybody else around the planet. And this moon is in a wide conjunction with Chiron, who is at 15 degrees of Aries, and is also in a wide conjunction with Venus, who is also who's at 27 degrees. And then it is also sextile Saturn. But ultimately, with our moon arriving in Aries, this is creating or kind of illuminating a stellium that we now have in Aries. We have the moon, and then we also have Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Chiron, because Mars and Jupiter have just joined us here in Aries. So things are gonna get spicy. This is again kind of that, like, where I was at the other day, where I was like, slow down, take a breath, drink some water, cool off. If you need to wear a red t-shirt, that's cool, but also, like, relax. Remember that we've got time. There's time. Relax. But, what are we doing with a balsamic moon? So the balsamic moon comes just before the new moon. And this is the distillation period. This is the point where we want to think back over our process of at least this last lunar cycle, if not bigger stuff, and think, what did we learn? Right? Distilling our experiences down into something that is usable, that's a concentrate. A little bit goes a long way, right? Just like wisdom, hopefully. And so it's also about what comes next. The balsamic moon connects esoterically with the waxing crescent, which is the lunar phase that's on the other side of the new moon. And so the balsamic moon is also kind of leaning into the future and is very like, I'm ready to change shape. Like, what's coming next? What's our next process? And we want to make sure that we give ourselves a little bit of time, for introspection or whatever, to think about the past. What did I learn? Where are we now? What does all of this add up to? That kind of stuff. Specifically, when we've got our balsamic moon in Aries, we are distilling what we have learned from our trials and our tribulations, and the places where we have had to be brave, where we've had to be courageous, where we've had to be warriors around something for ourselves or for our community, maybe. And so this brings us to a place where we get an opportunity to do two different things. One, this is an enriching of our understanding of our own strength and our own fortitude and our own courage. And I want to kind of sit with that for a second, because I don't know if you've been on Earth recently, but it's been a lot. It's kind of, stuff. And we have been through just a tremendous tremendous ordeal as a species, and we're not done. As much as we would all like to be done, and as much as many people are kind of just sticking their fingers in their ears and sort of la 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 through life at this point, because, like, 2.5 years of the worldwide panini, we're all kind of done with it, right? And yet we're not done. And so, either way, it is really important that we kind of take a moment and consider how much we have grown as people, how strong we have become, uh, our endurance, our fortitude, our bravery, our courage, the wisdom, that we have gained through our lived experience of being alive on Earth at this time of really tremendous upheaval. It's kind of incredible that you're still alive. Good job. Take a minute to consider that. Um, and as I have said in the past, part of the reason why it's really important to understand how much of a badass you are is because you're also meant to share it with other people. And so that's another part of this moon. The first part is take a moment to really appreciate your growth and your richness. Take a moment to appreciate what you can distill from your life, because it's potent stuff. But two, also, this moon is about passing this wisdom on to those who want it. Um, and, I've also said in the past that the friction of life sharpens us. So this is an opportunity for you to appreciate how sharp you have become. But also an opportunity to show another person, here's how you lean in on the hard parts. Here's how you can sharpen yourself against life when the going gets rough. Um, and here's what I did with this terrible experience. Here's what I learned. Here's how I made it through that. Again, we want to share this wisdom, and we want to share this wisdom with people who want it. Don't push this onto people who don't want to hear your war stories. just shut up and drink your beer or your juice or whatever it is, Grandpa. So there, we all have our war stories, and sometimes people don't want to hear our war stories. but but if you do have somebody who's like, hey, I'm having problems with this situation in my life, and you're like, I have lived through that, I have personally experienced that, do you want my advice? Do you want to hear how I dealt with that? This is the time to share that. Really potent stuff. And with that stellium in the background, moon, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Chiron, there is a real sense of emotional connection here. There's a real sense of tapping deeply into your personal pain around this. And there's also a real opportunity for understanding your bravery and the capacity of your circumstances. And there's a real opportunity, here's something super cool, in recollecting this and sharing this with another person, seeing more opportunity, seeing even more expansion in where you could go in your wild ass adventure that is your life. Cool shit, man. Potent stuff. Cool stuff. Really exciting astrology, in my opinion. I know I've been kind of bouncing back and forth from week to week on, like, yeah, we're going to talk about astrology, and yeah, we're not. But this I really wanted to talk about and share because I just thought it was so damn cool. All right. Very quickly, let us discuss the holy days of May 26th. We have in the sky the heliacal rising of the fixed star Hyadum. Now, this is actually a group of 6 stars situated in the face of the bull, Taurus. So there's Hyadum 1, Hyadum 2, and Ain, which we will talk about in just a second, and some others that are all kind of in a cluster. In Greek mythology, the Hyades were the 5 daughters of Atlas and half-sisters to the Pleiades. After the death of their brother Hyas, the weeping sisters were transformed into a cluster of stars that was afterwards associated with rain. And that association with rain is kind of like throughout a lot of different cultures in the Middle East and in Asia that practice astrology. They attribute this star to rain, monsoon, rainy weather, wet weather, that kind of stuff. Okay. Uh, May 26th through the 31st, from our pagan friends and ancestors, we have the Festival of Diana. This is connecting to our Dies Natalis of the Athenian temple that we talked about day before or 2 days before. Diana, of course, the goddess of the hunt, and we have already had a god earlier in this week, Okosi, who hunts with a bow and arrow, just like Diana. So interesting connections here. Our pagan friends and ancestor holidays that we talk about come from the modern reconstructed wheel of the year movement that's been happening on the internet for the last 20 years or so. There's a lot of calendars out there, and a lot of websites have just sort of copied and pasted calendars from a website before and what have you. So there's a lot of these holidays that have sort of become de facto pagan holidays, and they're vaguely associated with things that happened in the ancient world. And I've talked about this before. I think that's actually a really cool adaptation. Sometimes it's like we have the information. It's frustrating that this is not on the right day. But at other times, it's like we don't have the information. We only have an approximation. So deciding to celebrate this deity on this day is perfectly fine. Um, and also an acknowledgement of, one of the things that we do here on the podcast is we try to move and stay in alignment with those ancient calendars, which takes a lot of math on my part and other people's parts to figure out the lunar phases and which holidays fit to those, and redo that thing year after year because it changes every year. And that's hard to do. And at times almost impossible. So just picking a day that is approximately in the time period where the ancient holiday would have been celebrated, I think is perfectly fine. Again, sometimes I get frustrated because I'm like, we know we can make it on the right day, but it's fine. Personally, who am I to speak on behalf of the gods? Oh my God, I know, but here I am doing it. Personally, I think most of the deities are just stoked to have any attention at all, honestly. They're like, oh my God, they remembered me at all. This is wonderful. I don't care. It's a Thursday instead of a Saturday, whatever. I don't care. That's my thing. Okay. Also on this day, from our Catholic friends and ancestors, we have Ascension Day. This is a very old Christian observance of Jesus going to heaven. This Savior's gone to heaven. Okay, that's the one that got me canceled. This is a 4th century Catholic holiday, and it's interestingly usually celebrated on a Thursday, which of course is connected to Jupiter, Zeus, the great father god of the sky. And then last but not least, on this day, from our Greek friends and ancestors, we have the festival of Printeria. This was a festival of ancient Greece celebrated at Athens every year in honor of Athena Polias, with the heroine Agelaros, or with the two combined as Athena Agelaros, whose temple stood on the Acropolis. The festival's name came from Plinian, a Greek verb meaning to wash. Now, we've had our fixed star that means rain and moisture. We have this festival that's dedicated to Athena, but it's about washing. I don't know. There's connections here. I'm telling you, there's connections, man. There's connections, man. That cut to the shot of Charlie with the strings on the wall. Okay. Shall we head off to May 27th? Yeah, we probably should. May 27th is a Friday, and our waning moon enters Taurus. So here is what I want you to think about. We had our time with the moon hanging out in Aries and all of that, like, wham bam, thank you ma'am, Aries energy with the stellium and everything else, which is still kind of in the background, even though the moon has moved into Taurus. All those other planets are still hanging out in Aries. So again, patience, take a breath, have a glass of water, fucking chill out. But the work that we were asked to do, which is kind of appraising the tough times that we've been through and what that has brought us, the wisdom that that has brought us, and then, turning and sharing that wisdom with others who need it and who want it. Now, as the moon enters Taurus, I want you to think about this. As we have gone through tough times that have resulted in our lived wisdom that we can choose to share with folks, this is now a time to look out through time, um, and recognize our ancestors who walked these same steps in their process and their path. So again, that balsamic moon vibe of like backwards and forwards and time out of time, and thinking about, initially, I am a warrior. I've fought through some hard shit. Let me share my skills and my wisdom with other people who need this, who are maybe coming up behind me. Um, and then thinking through time to the people who came before you, and that they too had to have a moment like this of recognizing, holy shit, I lived through that. Maybe I should write some of this down. Maybe I should tell somebody about it. I should teach other people how to deal with this. I should teach other people how to live through this. That thing. And if nothing else, taking a moment to just give thanks to whomever you think of as ancestors. That certainly can be the ancestors of the people who raised you. That could also be the ancestors of your genetical background, whether those are the people who raised you or not, right? A lot of us out here are adopted. Um, but also, a lot of us don't necessarily learn a lot from our families, our biological or our, raised families. And sometimes it's people in society. It's sometimes people in, vast different worlds, entertainment or education or wherever, arts, who are our ancestors, who had to face really terrible challenges and acquired really incredible skill sets and wisdom because of it. So this can be a day of just thinking back on those people, and that they too have been where you are now. That thing. Potent stuff. Potent stuff. For our lunar body work, we are resting, relaxing, nourishing, supporting, or otherwise restoring the ears, the mouth, the teeth, the throat, the neck, the shoulders, all of the parts of the body and all of the processes dedicated to hearing and speech. That's what's up. Just resting and relaxing and nourishing and supporting. And for our plant body work, we are planting, transplanting, and grafting flowering bulbs, biennials and perennial flowers, and vegetables that bear crop below ground like carrots, onions, potatoes, and what have you. We have no astrology of note for this day, and we have no holy days of note for this day. And you might be thinking, what? 2 days in this week where there's no holy days? What the? Well, here's what's up. In the Northern Hemisphere, this is the farming season. So, no, there are not a lot of holy festivals. A lot of the festivals that are happening are either single day festivals and then there's nothing, or they're festivals that are kind of like all piled up on the same day, or they're festivals that are taking place over several days, and maybe you are participating 1 out of the 10. And then the rest of the time back to work. But that's what's up. We definitely see a diminishing in how many festivals are being celebrated at this time of year, because in the Northern Hemisphere, everybody's back to work. You've got to go out and actually work the land. There is no time to party, or not as much anyways. So yes, we do see several many less than we would at other times of year here at the end of Beltane. All right, on that note, let us move on to May 28th. All right, May 28th is a Saturday, and our waning moon is still hanging out in Taurus. Let us move directly to the astrology of this day, wherein we shall discover Venus is entering Taurus. And so we are now leaving a little bit of that Aries fieriness behind, and we are stepping into the cooling, misty forests of Taurus. Is Venus excited to be in Taurus? You goddamn right she is. Venus feels extremely comfortable in Taurus because this is her home sign. Venus rules the sign of Taurus. So we could say Just like with Mars hanging out in Aries, the parts of ourselves that are represented by Venus may feel much more comfortable authentically expressing themselves during this portion of the year. Venus is going to be in Taurus right up to June 22nd. So, right up to the summer solstice and Letha. So, from now, basically until summer solstice, it is welcome to the pleasure dome. Um, and, we might all be feeling a little more sensuous and a little more focused on material delights. We are definitely seeking pleasure and material comforts of a lasting value. So, also, let me say again, as I said earlier in this week, watch your spending. Venus is going to feel, as I said, more comfortable to express its authentic self. So, Venus is like, I want a $4,000 velvet couch. I'm having a $4,000 velvet couch. It's built by a master craftsman. Like, no problem, guys. It's going to last me for 50 years. Great, but can you afford it? Don't forget, Mercury's still in retrograde, right? So have another person read the contract. I'm not saying don't buy the thing. I'm just saying, like, be aware. This is also that time of year where a lot of us are, getting ready for our summertime adventures and things like that. And again, with Mercury retrograde hanging around in the background, we may have a lot of opportunities to overspend or misspend or sign on a line that we didn't necessarily mean to sign on, that kind of thing. But generally speaking, this is really about the pursuit of pleasure. It is absolutely moving to the front row of our Venusian concerns. So enjoy. I think that this is going to hopefully bring a level of lightness. I know that there's been, it's just so much on planet Earth right now. I'm really hoping Venus entering Taurus is going to be like, okay, lollipops for everybody. Let's just have a nice time. Okay. Who wants extra whipped cream? Huh? All right. Okay. Moving directly to the holy days of May 28th from our Roman friends and ancestors, running approximately from May 28th to June 1st, we have the Ludi Fabbrici. Now, the Ludi are always games that are played on the steps of various temples. There were like gambling games, but there was also like theater performances, plays, and puppetry shows and things like that. But this is a part of the Bean Calends / Lemuria / Rosarium festival saga that's happening in the background. And again, we talked last week and the week before about the Bean Calends and Lemuria. This is a multi-day ancestral appeasement festival that incorporates a lot of beans and a lot of like proceeding around the house many, many times and burning things and setting out sacred foods and stuff like that for the ancestors to kind of be like, thank you, please go back to the lands of the dead now. Okay, bye. Okay. Also in this day from our Hindi friends and ancestors, we have the Vasaka Puja. This is celebrated in parts of India. This is yet another Buddha birthday. We have a ton of Buddha birthdays at this time of year celebrated in all of these different regions of Central Asia, Southeast Asia, and on and on. So to me, that really speaks to that hermetic thing that's kind of in the background of like magicians and enlightenment and philosopher, magical study type stuff. Maybe that's a stretch, maybe that's incorrect, but I really see it in that same category. Yeah. Okay. Moving on to May 29th. Alrighty, May 29th is a Sunday. This brings us to the end of our lunar week, and we have our waning moon entering Gemini. So, this is officially the pre-funk kicking off for the new moon in Gemini that's going to be happening on May 30th. So there's that. First and foremost, when we enter the pre-funk for the new moon, really kind of when the moon hits balsamic, but honestly, just these last few hours, I am always going to encourage you in whatever way you can, because of course we live in the modern world, there's stuff going on, but in whatever way you can, take a time out, lock the door, and take an extra long bubble bath. Um, Turn off your phone, turn off your internet, turn off your TV. Spend some time with yourself. Spend some time in peace and quiet, in meditation, in solitude. Um, you know, just come to a point of stillness. Some people will do magical work during this time period. That's cool. But in some point leading up to the new moon, I encourage you to just be still. Don't do any work. No cleaning out, no emptying, no, uh, none of that. No releasing, no cord cutting. Um, those are all types of magics that are completely appropriate to do during the waning moon. But again, these hours leading up to the actual new moon itself, I really encourage a stop, a stillness of some kind. Um, Again, it's something that I said in the Mercury retrograde podcast, which I put up for patrons, was it is unnatural to expect production and result from ourselves at all times. Even the gods and goddesses above our heads slow down, stop, rest, and recuperate and reorganize and reorient, and then slowly start to head forward again and pick up steam and go and do stuff and make things happen. Even they take a break and take a minute to like pause on shit. And so it is really unnatural that we don't, or that we think that we shouldn't, or that we can't. So in whatever way you can at the new moon or leading up to the new moon, I always recommend that you take some time out to do fucking nothing. And again, if you can do nothing where you are truly disconnected from everybody else and everything else, and you are just with yourself in your space, that's the most potent shit. But if downgrading has to be just some trash TV and playing a game on your phone, at least stare off into space for a little while, okay? Just give me that. All right. um, so that's really all I have to say about that. So let us get directly into the holy days of May 29th. And that will kick off with a heliacal rising of the fixed star Ain. Now, this is also in that cluster with the Hyadum fixed stars. This is specifically the left eye of Taurus. Now, the name Ain itself recalls that the name Ain itself recalls that exalted level above the Kabbalah's tree of life, only 2 steps down from the Godhead, entirely appropriate for a star so close to the angel signified by Aldebaran, who we will talk about next week. That it is more an additional quality to the greater star than a symbol in its own right. And this is a quote from the Astrology King website, who has a lot of really cool information on the fixed stars. And what they are saying here is this, that Ain is a star that almost describes something else more holy than itself, rather than it being the special thing in and of itself. But what I think is interesting here is the connection to, or the reminding us that the name Ain connects with that energy at the Godhead. What Astrology King is referring to here is the word or the phrase or the name Ein Sof And without getting too far afield, yay, it's a tangent. What we're really saying there is sort of like the nothingness that is the all. Which is, kind of how we describe God or gods, or, the universal goo, as I like to refer to it, right? The stuff, the bits of the universe. And combining that with the Eye of Taurus and rain and all of this stuff. Um, it gets a bit esoteric, but what it makes me think of is that rain is, extremely necessary to make things happen. But rain is almost a, a symbol of the life force. And the life force is sending down this rain to make things happen on Earth. Um, Very much how the nothing that is all, or the all that is nothing, rains down enlightenment upon us, and we may or may not make something of it, right? If I have seeds planted and it rains, I will grow stuff. If I haven't planted any seeds, I just have mud. And that's cool. I could make clay out of mud, but I'm not going to make food. And maybe I'll make nothing. Who knows? And it's very similar to, the great enlightenment sources of the universe can rain down wisdom upon us, and we may or may not soak it up, right? We may or may not be able to utilize it at that time. Sometimes that's through a fault of our own, and sometimes it isn't. But altogether, I sort of think of this as this week of this metaphor, um, of the great life force of the universe is kind of getting ready to rain down on us resource of some kind, enlightenment, water, something. And we might be in a position to utilize it, and we might not be in a position to utilize it. And it is what it is, right? We're going to do whatever happens. We're going to live through it. Um, but I don't know. Again, maybe I'm really far afield with that, but it's very obvious to me, and I thought it was really cool the way it all lined up. All right, other holy days that we have here on May, what is this, 29th? Okay, from our UK friends and ancestors, we have Oak Apple Day. Now, this is a traditional celebration commemorating some ridiculous event where somebody took over land of something else or whatever. But here's what's fun. This basically is focused on people who need to wear oak sprigs of oak leaves, people hanging oak leaf branches in churches and parading through the streets with them. And of course, we are coming into the last 4 weeks of the Oak King's reign. For pagans and heathens and witches out there, the god energy is, for some of us, divided into two forms, the Holly King and the Oak King, who fight eternally for the sacred knocking of boots with the goddess. And from winter solstice to summer solstice, that half of the year is ruled or overseen by the Oak King. And at summer solstice, they fight, and the Oak King dies or is beheaded or is blinded or crippled or otherwise pushed out of the way. And the Holly King takes over from summer solstice to winter solstice. And so here we are, stepping into the last 4 weeks of Beltane, but the last 4 weeks of the Holly King's, or excuse me, the Oak King's reign. And we have this lovely Oak Apple Day where people are supposed to be marching around with oak leaves and wearing oak leaves. And even up to the point of, like, people who didn't would be thrashed with nettles and, like, pinched and stuff like that, kind of on, this, like, you better do this or else kind of thing. I really love it. All right. And last but not least, from our Roman friends and ancestors, we have Ambarvalia. This is a Roman agricultural fertility rite held in honor of the goddess Ceres and the goddess Deidia. There was a procession of animals that were going to be sacrificed thrice, 3 times. That's right, three. Wait a minute. We've had a lot of three talk this week, haven't we? I'm sure it's just a coincidence. 3 times around the fields, whence the feast is supposed to have taken its name, Ambio, I go around, and Arvum, field. Now, what's interesting, as I dug into this holiday a little bit, was that this was a holiday that was celebrated by people who lived in town. The Romans who were actually in the fields living on the farms, they did a totally different ceremony. They still did a festival or like a ritual sacrifice at this moment and a little ceremony, but they kind of just like did it and got on with it. But in the city, this was like a really big deal. So interesting there around the symbolism and like doing things for the sake of the symbolism and all of that stuff. I'm always really like tuned into, what were the Romans doing and what are we doing as Americans? Because it's so similar. All right. That brings us to the end of the week. So let's get into this roundup. Shall we? Okay, for our lunar phases this week, we are moving from Pisces to Gemini. And so we can see that our mutable signs have taken over, and they are here to help us begin to shape change and morph into our summer form. Again, we are in the last 4 weeks of Beltane, last 4 weeks of spring, and we are going to be heading into summer soon enough. So here we go. Okay. The astrology of this week, May 22nd, Mercury in retrograde moves back into Taurus. Mars in Pisces, sextile Pluto retrograde in Pisces at 28 degrees. On May 23rd, we have the Sun in Gemini, sextile Jupiter in Aries at 2 degrees. We also have Mars in Pisces, sextile Mercury retrograde in Taurus at 29 degrees. May 24th, we have Mars moving into Aries, or Aries moving into Mars. It's kind of the same thing. We also have Venus in Aries, sextile Saturn in Aquarius at 25 degrees. On May 25th, we have Mercury retrograde in Taurus, trine Pluto retrograde in Capricorn at 28 degrees. On May 26th, we have Venus in Aries, square Pluto retrograde in Capricorn at 28 degrees. On May 28th, we have Venus entering Taurus. And on May 29th, we have Mars in Aries conjunct Jupiter in Aries at 3 degrees. That's it, y'all. What have we got coming up? Okay, as I said before, we've got Tarot Circle coming up for patrons. Join Patreon literally for $1 and get access to that workshop. And we are going to have Letha class coming up soon. I'm going to be teaching the Letha class maybe a little bit earlier in June than I usually do. I'm not sure yet. It's coming up in the next few weeks. I will be teaching it twice this year. I will have more information about this on my website soon. But I will be teaching Letha as a live stream on YouTube for free, as I have been doing with all of the Wheel of the Year classes for the last 2.5 years. But I will also be teaching this class live for the first time in 2 years. I am fucking thrilled. I will be teaching this class live at the music festival, Letha Cascadia, here in Washington State. You can look up their website. I will have more information about this live offering on my website. The workbooks are going to be available to purchase, which normally is something that you have to be a patron to be able to get a copy of the workbook. But for this class, for this live offering, I'm going to be bringing some actual physical prints outs. And also, I'm going to be available at the festival for tarot readings and a little bit of astrology work as well. So come and see me. I'm very excited about this festival. It is a wonderful festival. I'm very glad that it's back. It features some of the best musicians in the Pacific Northwest and really kind of on the West Coast. It's on private land. It's beautiful camping. It's really incredible. Check out Letha Cascadia. Very, very excited to be able to offer the Letha class there this year. And I hope to see you in the trees, heathens. But until next week, take care of yourselves. Remember, as the week winds down, getting ready for that new moon, take some time out if you get an opportunity to. All right, my heathens, blessed be.